Today, the differentiator is volume.
What's your point of view on contingency that you think is cool?
Well, first of all, we have to look at what the person's goal is, what the operations goal is. Is it to scale or just to run a small product? That's what determines the decisions you're going to make. Because when we talk about scaling, we're talking about high volume, especially today, considering how most campaign scaling is done. For example, the
Bahian scale. Just to clarify, what does scaling mean to you? Starting when? To give people an idea?
scaling up,
Which is subjective, right?
right?
Per day, I mean, in terms of monthly investment.
I think at least when talking about scaling per day, spending at least 100,000 reais a day,
Per day.
daily spend. So like if you're running 10, 20, 30,000 reais a day, you don't need a lot of structure. So for example, for someone who's just starting out, you don't need such a robust structure, right? It's not something the guy can run it with a profile on Chrome. However, when we're talking about many accounts at a higher scale, multiple 6 figures, 7 figures per day, those are scales that require a lot of volume. A lot of account volume, a lot of profile volume. It's a much more robust structure, but then that's why I said it. You have to understand where you are at to know what decisions you need to make. Because the guy can't freeze up because he's just starting out and then he hears this and thinks he needs to
But it is robust, right?
contingency team.
Yes.
When the guy is just starting out in the market, now for the guy who's already running, he already has more cash flow. He's already trying to scale up more robustly. So at that point, he already needs to better structure this whole process. But over there, we use it like this with multi-log, with proxy, everything isolated. We have many profiles, many accounts, many BMs, because that's necessary to achieve a more significant scale nowadays. So we also see that the people who are scaling the most today, especially since we just had the event and, well, we heard a lot of things and took the opportunity to talk to a lot of people. And today, the differentiator is volume. The people who are scaling the most have a lot of volume. There are many accounts, many profiles running at the same time together in order to achieve a significant daily spend. And
From your technical point of view, just so people have an idea, to give some context about Rodrigo as well. He runs operations that have billed multiple 8 figures. He's a guy who's never shown up publicly, but he came here because he's my friend. So I invited him. I pulled the guy out of his cave. So what he's saying here is really relevant. And from your point of view, why do you think things have changed so much from this year on? Paid traffic, and that so-called Bahian scaling, which is 1.51, 2.51. Everyone already knows how that works. Yesterday, we heard about the Soviet scaling, which is using a bunch of ad accounts. Why do you think it changed so much like that? What happens when you use this kind of scaling?
I think it changed mainly because the auction, that is the traffic sources, started to become more inflated. There are more people advertising. And the people who were already advertising are now advertising much more, investing much more. If we think about a few years ago, 3 years ago, a strong scaled operation, how much would such an operation spend? 30,000 reais per day, right? At most, right? They managed to invest. They made
30,000 reais?
They made 30K daily, a million
In a month.
They were a king. The guy would invest 15,000, 20,000 reais a day, right? On Facebook, he'd make about 30. So that was a scaled operation 3 years ago. Today, there are already people out there investing more than 1 million a day in spend and expenses. So it's completely different now. So what does this cause? Inflation. Because the number of people in the world hasn't increased that abruptly. The number of social media users or
market players.
Exactly. Players are something that keeps rotating, right? It keeps rotating because there are people entering the market and people leaving the market. So even if there is an increase, there are also people leaving. But this increase in investment volume, to me, is what changed the traffic the most. Because what happened? It got much more expensive. So for example, speaking about the United States, maybe if you used to pay for a click there before, 3 or 4 reais, let's talk in reais, how much were people paying? 20 reais, 25 reais, 30 reais. And then they discovered this, for example, the Bahian scale, which is nothing more than a method to make this cheaper. By somehow bypassing this auction, I believe it's basically by placing microbids, where you set such a small budget that Facebook might try to find a way to spend your money. Maybe that's the reason you can make the auction a bit cheaper to give you a chance there, right? And when you do this, you can really reduce your cost per click, your CPM. It basically gets cut in half, and the cost per click is often 3 times lower, for example. So it makes it possible to invest much more. It allows you to scale a lot more. But it also requires more structure in terms of contingency.